This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. No matter how much planning you do for the offseason, there's going to be some curveballs that pop up and change the standard thinking around what to do, especially if you're a team looking for a quarterback in free agency or the draft, right? Some guys might have a really good college football playoff, and that dramatically changes where you think about them going in the draft. Some guys may declare that you expect to not declare. Some guys may not declare that you expect to declare. There's all kind of curveballs that can be thrown at you in the draft. There's also curveballs that can be thrown at you in the free agency / trade route. One of these curveballs that I don't think enough people have talked about, at least in Cleveland, has been the potential of Brock Purdy's name being entered into the available quarterback pool. Now, you might say to me, why in the world would Brock Purdy be available this year? Well, if you haven't been paying much attention to the San Francisco 49ers, they're not having a great year either. They're 6-9 right now. The Brock Purdy himself has 3,487 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And I think the biggest problem that Brock Purdy has is the perception. For whatever reason, and I'm not going to act like I've watched every single 49ers game this season or last season, but the perception is of Brock Purdy is somebody who's being elevated. That's been the perception he's been fighting since he started out the 7th round for the 49ers. And whenever they don't have the great supporting cast, they're not winning games. And the problem is that Brock Purdy this offseason is going to be due up for an extension, right? It's the second year before the second to last year of his contract. That's usually when quarterbacks get extensions, especially quarterbacks who've been Pro Bowlers before. Brock Purdy has. And Brock Purdy is going to expect to reset the market with his extension. Now, if you've not been paying attention to the quarterback market, I believe the last quarterback to get a deal is Joe Burrow, but I will double check what the top of the quarterback market looks like right now. But right now, average per year, top of the market, we're talking about $60 million. Next year, if we're going into total, $60 million is Dak. Dak got 240 over 4, I believe. Trevor Lawrence got 275. Joe Burrow got 275. So, you're talking about more than $60 million a year for Brock Purdy, who at this point is a quarterback who has not proven that he's good enough to elevate the team when things go wrong, or at least be a winning quarterback when things go wrong. Now, I think there is a good counter argument to this, right? Which is, look at Joe Burrow right now. Like, nobody's going to argue that Joe Burrow is not a franchise quarterback, but still the Bengals are not a winning team. I think the one difference between Joe Burrow and Brock Purdy is that Joe Burrow is putting up outstanding individual numbers. Brock Purdy is having what looks like his worst year of his career. And Joe Burrow and the Bengals, I do believe at this point, have a better record than the 49ers, despite not being the more talented team, right? The 49ers are clearly the more talented team than the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's where that argument kind of dies, right? That's the big knock against Brock Purdy. And if we're going to clown the Cowboys for paying Dak Prescott $60 million a year, $231 guaranteed, that's the most in the NFL. And like, you look at the Jaguars, they're paying $55 million a year, $200 guaranteed for Trevor Lawrence. Tua Tagovailoa is getting $53, $167 guaranteed. And you see these teams that are all below 500, that feel like they've all hit a ceiling, and it doesn't matter whether the franchise quarterback is playing or not when it comes to their ability to be championship contenders. And you look at that and you ask yourself, hey, if you're the 49ers at least, you ask yourself, is Brock Purdy the kind of guy I want to pay $60 million to? Considering that you feel like you have Kyle Shanahan, who is seen as a quarterback guru, who has this perception about him that he can just pick up a wide range of guys and develop them into exactly what you need, basically what Brock Purdy is, right? Like you saw him do it with Jimmy Garoppolo. You think he can do this. He did it with Brock Purdy. You think he could do this with somebody else. And you know that, hey, it looks like Sam Darnold's going to hit the market. And he is somebody who has played in this system before and has a skill set that you can work with. Or Kirk Cousins looks like he's going to be hitting the market. And it looks like he's somebody who has a skill set that you can work with, right? And you think to yourself, hey, maybe we don't got to pay $60 million for quarterback play. If that's the price for Brock Purdy, maybe that's not a price that we're willing to pay. Maybe we're willing to go pursue Sam Darnold, who will be significantly under that number at 44 or 45 or 40, whatever he's going to get. But if the 49ers are interested in him, he'll probably be about $40 million. And say, hey, we'll save $20 million a year. We'll sign him to a short-term deal. And we feel like within the next few drafts, we can find somebody who can offer a higher ceiling than Brock Purdy, while also getting a ton of assets for trading Brock Purdy to get better, right? Do what the Texans did when they traded Deshaun Watson. They got a bunch of extra first-round picks from the Browns. They used those first-round picks to help them get premium talent, and now they're one of the better teams. Well, they're not one of the better teams in the NFL this year, but that's more due to youth, but they're one of the more talented teams in the NFL for sure. You would save some money on the cap long-term, which would allow you to build around whoever the quarterback is, especially if you believe that that quarterback and the difference between that quarterback and Brock Purdy is just ultimately not that different. That could be the thought process that the 49ers have. We feel like we can replicate the Brock Purdy experience, and we feel like we can replicate that to a reasonable degree for well under $60 million. Brock Purdy's not willing to move off $60 million because, again, if you feel like you could get similar for 40, you're going to want to pay 40, right? So, but if Brock feels like he can get 60, well, he's going to want to get 60. Now, the 49ers have been known to be tough negotiators, and I think that's why this is out here, right? The news is out about the 49ers might not be willing to be gung-ho about bringing back Brock Purdy at a super high number. And I think the reason it's out there is because they don't want to do it. Now, that doesn't mean automatically that they're going to trade him. But if this gets to an impasse or to a point to where they do want to trade him, or they're fine with going after a different option, or they're like, hey, we don't got time to waste. Let's go get Sam Darnold and let's just move on. Then all of a sudden, we're in an interesting spot because Brock Purdy would be an option for every quarterback needy team. And if you look at this draft class, if you look at the free agent pool, I mean, Brock Purdy would be one of the better options. I mean, now you got to factor in a couple things with Brock, right? Like the fact that he hasn't elevated a team, sure. But also, like, there are some elbow injuries, some shoulder injuries that have popped up with them that are a bit concerning about his long-term future. And again, that might factor into why the 49ers want to sell on him high. But that might be something there. Now, I'm not advocating the Browns go out after spending $46 million on Deshaun Watson a year, add $60 million to the bill for Brock Purdy. I'm not advocating for that at all. What I am saying is that this Brock Purdy thing is a domino that can fall that could affect the Browns. Because if you're the Browns and you want to get Kirk Cousins or Justin Fields or Sam Darnold and you want to answer this quarterback question in free agency, well, Brock Purdy becoming available, that changes things. Who are teams? Is somebody willing, like, will this create another domino effect where somebody sees Brock Purdy is better than the guy they have and they trade Brock for Brock Purdy and now they got another quarterback that they're willing to ship, right? Let's say the Buccaneers, for example. This would be a hilarious scenario. The Buccaneers, for example, see that Brock Purdy's available and go, hey, we think that guy can take us further than Baker Mayfield for whatever reason. And they trade for Brock Purdy, now Baker Mayfield's available. Right? Or, maybe the Lions think that's the case and they get off Jared Carr, right? Like there could be a domino effect because more than the obvious teams would be interested in Brock Purdy. Right now, only the obvious teams are going to even consider spending $40 million on Sam Darnold. Right now, only the obvious teams are really going to consider starting somebody like Justin Fields or something like that, right? Like nobody is going to nobody's going to get rid of Jared Goff to start Justin Fields or something like that. That's just not really going to happen. But if you introduce an option that's going to bring teams to the table that might not have really been thinking about quarterback, well, then all of a sudden that opens up a litany of options, right? Maybe the Jets get into that, and that brings up Aaron Rodgers to be free, or Derek Carr gets free because the Saints want to go after and pay, Brock Purdy a bunch of money to play for them, right? Like this is a domino that could or could not fall. But if this domino falls, right, if the 49ers this offseason decide, hey, we're not going to reset the market with Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy's people are like, unacceptable, we want to reset the market, we think we should reset the market, then that's where you get to an interesting point where chaos could ensue. Now, again, you're the Browns. I do think there's going to be some people who would advocate for this because Brock Purdy is the type of quarterback that would work in the Cleveland Browns system. And I do know that Kevin Stefanski is fond of his skill set, but it would be a really tough sell because you have to sign him to a contract, presumably. Now, you could trade for Brock Purdy, keep him on his rookie deal, and then franchise tag him. But more than likely, any team that trades for him is going to give him that deal pretty much immediately. So that's just how that's going to work in real life. So if I'm a Browns fan, this offseason, right, if you're looking for dominoes that could fall, right, Trevor Lawrence is one, but I find that domino falling to be unlikely. But the domino that I'm looking at, and I'm thinking to myself, hey, something could happen here, right? Like something could shake loose here. It's definitely Brock Purdy because teams see a Tua situation, right? They see a situation where a quarterback got signed to a ton of money, and then when it came time for that quarterback to elevate, because here's the other thing, right? I always talk about this when it comes to the difference between really good quarterbacks and franchise quarterbacks. I don't believe you can overpay for an elite quarterback. Like Joe Burrow, I don't care what the money is for Joe Burrow. Whatever money it is that makes him able to play for your football team is worth it because Joe Burrow has been a proven elevator, right? Same thing with Lamar Jackson. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes. Those three guys, I've seen them elevate. I've seen them play out their minds in horrible situations. I've seen them be able to get the most out the least on a consistent basis. And when you're able to do that on a consistent basis, when you're a quarterback that has demonstrated that value, you are beyond worth it. Because who knows how much worse the Bengals would be without Joe Burrow? Who knows how much worse the Ravens would be with Lamar Jackson? Who knows how bad the Chiefs would be without Patrick Mahomes? But they're doing a great deal to let the team get away with it. So they're worth whatever money you bring in. You can always have a great team, a Super Bowl contending team with those guys, as long as you're willing to spend a little bit of cash. The Bengals' problem is they don't want to spend cash, but you'll notice the Ravens and the Chiefs, they're pretty much always in championship contention because they have those two guys. You can't overpay for elite quarterback play. But for pretty good quarterback play or good quarterback play, you can most certainly overpay. And when you start paying guys, the same issue I had with wide receivers, right? When Tyreek Hill got $30 million, no problem with that. That's an elite guy. But when non-elite guys are starting to get Tyreek Hill money, now you got an issue because they're not going to cover up as much in your offense as Tyreek Hill would. And you're paying them like they can do it on Tyreek Hill's level. Like once the elite number becomes the normal number, you're in trouble. And that's the problem with Brock Purdy. You would have to pay Brock Purdy more than what the Bengals are paying Joe Burrow, more than what the Ravens are paying Lamar Jackson, more than what the Chiefs are paying Patrick Mahomes, because that's how the quarterback market works. But he's not one of those guys. So when things go wrong on your team, he's not going to be able to elevate you and keep you as a consistent Super Bowl contender. So you end up paying him a ton of money, but he can't make up for the things. So you end up having to maneuver around his contract a ton to try to keep things around him, and it's just not what you thought it was going to be. That is the problem with Brock Purdy and why the 49ers might not want to pay him. But here's the thing. The 49ers might not willing to pay him because they have confidence that they could develop a quarterback. They have confidence that they go out there. They have the best quarterback coach in the game, and Kyle Shanahan, and figure it out with the Sam Darnold or whoever they got to figure it out with. They feel like they can figure it out with a wide range of options, and they feel like they don't have to do that. But some of these other teams, like if you're the Tennessee Titans, you see a former Pro Bowl quarterback's available, and all it's going to cost you is some draft picks and $60 million a year, you're probably going to want to do that, right? Maybe you're a team like the Seahawks who feels like they're a quarterback away, and maybe the guy that they have right now is not enough. Maybe you want to go after somebody. I'm not saying I think that Brock's a upgrade over Geno Smith. I tend to think that would be a neutral move, but maybe the Seahawks do. Or maybe the Buccaneers think that's the case, or the Saints, or so on and so forth, right? Insert team here, the Cardinals, or whatever, right? The Lions. And that's how a team can be easily talked into trading for Brock Purdy. And who does that free up if that's the case? And what price is that player going to be? This is the domino that could fall, that could really change the offseason for the Cleveland Browns. I don't know how it's going to fall. I don't think the Browns will be directly invested or interested in Brock Purdy, but I do think that what the 49ers do with Brock Purdy is going to, in some way, shape what the Browns do at their quarterback position, because it's going to affect the options available to the Browns. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.